Hey, this is such an important topic, Dr. Hillary, especially for your life, because we're trying to prevent you from getting dementia. I'm right there with you, but this is how we knew we really needed to jump on it for you, right? In how old were you when we first did the genetic test? Maybe you were around 40?
I guess so. Maybe we
Okay,
were
so
40.
we didn't do this with the intention of finding this out, right? You and
Or
I
I
were.
was 45. I was 45. We
Okay.
did a genetic test. It was a hormone test that we were looking at because I have PCOS and that's a metabolic syndrome. So we were looking at my hormone test and your hormone test and how it would look different, how we
Right.
detox our hormones. And one of the extra genes that was done in that hormone test was the APOE gene.
Mhm.
And mine popped positive with the dementia risk factors. And I have a grandmother who had dementia. I have an uncle who just passed from Alzheimer's. Um, I have other family members that are really struggling with memory and mind, and it's just like all the red lights are flashing.
Right, but you're a sharp person. You always got A's in school. You never have memory problems. You can pull the name of the street or the name of I'm like, what's that person's name? Hillary can pull it. So we weren't on top of this for you before this. This test illuminated the need for us to figure out preventative medicine around it because you don't have the other risk factors that we think of for Alzheimer's and dementia. You just don't. You don't have the oxidative stress, the weight issues, the toxicity issues, or the comorbidity, like the things that, like, you don't have diabetes, you don't
Well,
actually.
I think some of the toxicity issues, though, let's speak into that a little bit because I think
Definitely.
some of that's unknown. Like
Right, right.
we
We
have
didn't know about it before.
And we don't totally know our total toxic burden or our heavy metal
Mhm.
exposures. Like, we
Mhm.
don't know until we test or look for things. I don't have obvious symptoms, but that doesn't mean I didn't have exposures. So,
Right. And we would have just been focused on it for your hormone health and overall health, the toxicity piece, insulin resistance, knowing that you had PCOS. Now we have a lot of conversations and do a lot of conferences and reading on preventing dementia, which is really, it took us, doing this genetic test took us in a bit of a different direction for your preventative healthcare. And then we came up with other things on the test that were shocking to both of us that also play into preventing dementia. So mine came back where my body doesn't do vitamin C very well. It doesn't absorb it well. It uses up whatever it has. It just needs more vitamin C. I wasn't taking vitamin C prior to this genetic test because I eat salads and I love vegetables and fruits and I have a smoothie a day. I thought I got enough vitamin C, but seeing the test results on, your genetic makeup really requires extra vitamin C made me think about that more. And who knows, maybe that is playing into preventing memory problems from coming up for me as I get older.
yeah. So, the backing up is like obviously, like any massive disease
Mhm.
process, there is a genetic factor. And then there is an epigenetic factor, which is all the lifestyle factors and other things that are influencing the expression of that genome. But this um, APOE gene
Mhm.
the statistics are pretty staggering
Mhm.
at how closely connected it is to the really seeing a genetic expression of Alzheimer's or dementia, one of them. So, and Kara and I have been speaking to women, and this statistic is kind of frightening, but 1 in 5 women at the age of 65 currently in the United States is being diagnosed with dementia. And 65 is really young. So, if you're hearing this and you're not getting the memo of how
I don't
young
want that.
65 is, then anyway, I
And
was
we don't talk about it, right? Because it's like we're worried about breast cancer. The stats are actually better for breast cancer,
I
really,
mean,
than
significantly.
then it's a scary thing that we just don't think about. What can I do? And now we've been spending a bunch of years looking at, like, what can we do to keep our brains healthy? And there's a lot. And so people just test that one gene, But we saw so much more in our genetic test of like the vitamin D, the blood sugar regulation, all the other things we know that play into brain health. It's all about cellular repair. But I mean, your brain is just this kind of like soupy sponge. So we have to be really careful with what we put in our bodies for our brain health, right? And, things like not getting enough sleep, these are real basics that we've been talking about with our community. And it's really important to think about those basic lifestyle choices and preventing this kind of thing. And if anyone's listening and you have a parent or a grandparent that you've experienced this or you've walked the path, it is very hard. These people often get very anxious, they get depressed. We just had someone at my office in Connecticut who has dementia and called twice in one day and had the same conversation with one of our front desk people. She thought that it was a little bit of a joke, like, hey, I haven't talked to you in a while, but it actually was the second conversation that person didn't remember at all. So these things, like, that crushed me that happened, that's just so upsetting. You have it on your to-do list to call your doctor's office and then you do it twice by accident. That kind of thing is just, I want to prevent that.
Yeah. Yesterday I was traveling. I was with my partner Dan's family for a funeral. And so there's the oldest generation where there's some 80s, then 70s, then 60s. And so you can definitely see this is one of those situations when you're in a big family gathering and you're trying to see who remembers the names of all, who comes together as families, and you can see the brains of 80-year-olds. It's harder to remember names and stories. So there is part of this aging that happens, but short-term memory is a massive thing that we have to all really work to get a hold of, because what happens is the second that starts to slip, people lose their confidence. They start to, like you said, get anxious, get depressed. They start to lose skills. So it all kind of, and then I saw traveling home, a woman and a man. The man looked perfectly healthy when you looked at him, but you could really tell he didn't know what was happening. And he was probably in his early 70s. And the woman was like having to really manage it. And so this is a devastating thing if you're in a couple and one person's losing their memory. So the long and short of it is, this is the most important health prerogative, for women in entering into our 50s. And what you do in your 50s will lay the ground for the 70s. And so there's these genetic factors that you should just know. You just should know them. It's 2024. We have access to this information. You should just know them. And if you did an old school, I have some patients that are like, well, I did the 23andMe way back. Those things are really hard to look at. So if you can easily go in, we have patients upload 20 pages of genetic material. That's not what we're talking about. You need an upgraded genetic test that's looking at these things that we can actually change. And like Kara said, the vitamin C genes, the vitamin D genes, looking at how you're oxidizing your metabolic genes so that we could get a sense of your blood sugar and where it is, some of your hormones, because estrogen has a huge estrogen and testosterone have huge impacts on brain health. So you want to know about how you're detoxing and metabolizing estrogen. The brain is a very important, multifaceted, complex place that we're trying to influence in a lot of different ways.
And it's a really important focus for the women in our group that we work with, that are in our community. And the reason why I think is because it touches all areas of life. And one of the things, we're all about longevity. One of the things with longevity, do you remember? It's like a joke to say, do you remember? Because of course you do. Now, when we talked about how one way to extend extend lifespan is by having different activities and laying down different memories. So it was like, don't do your daily routine. Go someplace else, do your walk someplace else, go on a vacation you wouldn't normally do, order something you wouldn't normally do at a restaurant, hang out with people you don't usually hang out with. All those new experiences actually extend time in the way we remember our lives and make us feel like we've lived more, we are experiencing life more, and it is a way of anti-aging. And so if we can't lay down those memories, we're actually just in this tailspin of the old memories that are coming up. And for a lot of people with dementia, those are the traumatic things that happened in our lives. So we really want to allow people to make new memories and have new experiences and see like the color of life. It's sort of like that. It's like, this is just about a like leveling up of the way we interact with our environment. And if our brains aren't properly laying down those memories, the short-term ones, we won't have that richness of life. So it's even more important than just, oh, I want to remember where I put my keys or my grandchild's name. And so it's such a big piece. And the genetic test is just one place to start. I know that we're dedicating the whole month of July to this. Is that right? It's Brain Health Month over here. Okay. So in doing that, I was just reading about some teas that actually can help us with our focus and our memory, and looking at the traditional teas that those blue zone people, the people who live longer, these cultures that we study and these groups of people that live longer than the rest of us, and what do they do? A lot of times it's these herbal teas. So we're going to get into that and a few other things that people can pull into their daily lives. But if you don't know you have the genetic setup for it, I mean, we're doctors, we're all about preventative medicine, and we just didn't have this on our radar until we saw that gene pop for Hillary. And I'm like, hoping Hillary's working with me when we were in our 80s, So I want her to be as sharp as she is. So we just need to like make sure that we know our risks so that we can make the right choices, because there's some dietary things you can do and there's a lot of lifestyle stuff. So in this day and age, we're not stuck with these genes. We don't even know if it's really going to happen to you, but we need to know if you have that risk so we can take it into account.
And the risk for dementia and Alzheimer's, this gene, it's a big percentage. So when you have it, like me, I have to, like last night, I have always in my life been able to get 4-5 hours of sleep and be really fully operational. And so it's been a card I've played in my life that I can burn the candle at both ends. I can take it away from my night. I don't need I can sleep less. And last night I was going to do one of those moves, wake up early at 5:30 or 5 and get my life organized, or 4:30, but I had been doing paperwork and hanging with my kids. So it was already 11:30. And I just was like, Hillary, you have to extend to 6:30. Like if you don't start actively putting more sleep in the bank, and everything, then you are legitimately causing yourself illness. It's
Right.
like as bad as me eating sugar all day. And I know I can't do that, even though maybe I like to. It's starting to get some of these disciplines and weaving them into your life, right?
Right. Because if you see a lab test, there's something psychological that happens where then it becomes really real. Like you can know all your grandparents have whatever, but if you see it, like, ooh, it really makes you pay attention to it and take those steps that are needed, which can be very easy things. These are not hard lifestyle things. Preventing chronic disease is about simple changes in our daily lives and tweaking them. So somebody's asking about the test. So we're happy to do the genetic testing in our group. You can just write in for information on that. And we're going to be doing that next month all together, which is fantastic. But you do get a private review with someone we've trained to go through it with you so that you make sure that you have like your top things you could be doing.
And yeah, we'll just drop the link here. So if you don't know if you have what your APOE gene looks like for you, what your risk is. And there are several different factions of this gene, and it sets you up more for letting you know if you have cardiovascular risk factors or brain risk factors, dementia risk factors. So this is something important for you to know so you can take action against it. Yeah.
Right. So we can do a lot for our brains. Don't just sit back and let this stuff happen to you. Take some action. It's so important. What are you going to do without your brain? I mean, really, like what kind of life are you going to live? What burden are you going to be on your family? I don't want to be a burden on my family. I want to be taking care of everybody else.
Me too. I want to be the matriarch, the old pretty matriarch.
You will be.
Okay, good.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.